I'm talking about Spiritism today on this live stream on 12/21, 2021. And we're going over Through the Mist, Chapter 5, The Home of the Rest, and it's continued. Before I begin, let us have a short prayer. Dear Jesus, in this Christmas season, please give us the gift of discernment and able to filter through all the different things that we're being told in this time of somewhat conflicting reports and people who want to tell us what to do and people who really don't have our best in mind, who just want control. Please help us discern and decide what should our path should be, who sh- where we should look for good information versus the mainstream information that is out there, which is not in our best interest. Amen. So we are talking about Through the Mist. It is a book by a spirit who wished to remain nameless. Now, his first name is Fred because people said his name was Fred. And they said, "Hey, Fred." So we know his first name is Fred. He was a very wonderful, religious man who was born in a pretty wealthy family. He didn't really have a profession. He went to the slums of London and helped people near the end of the 19th century. So in this first four chapters, he was killed, awoke into the valley of where people would wake up after death. He had no memory of being killed. He was trying to rescue a boy in the middle of a very busy street with horses and carriages going back and forth. He had no memory of being trampled or anything. He and the boy appeared on this grassy knoll. Now, another spirit took the boy to a good place, and and this woman came up and helped him kind of begin his journey on a path away from there. And then another spirit came and walked him to this kind of like little park. And then he found out, well, this doesn't look like a park. This looks more like a convalescent home. So that's where he is now. And he's just kind of waiting to find out who's going to meet him next, because he's already in the habit of he's going to be met at the strategic location. So and that's the way it works in the spirit world. Everybody knows who you are and what's going on. So let me before I begin that, let me show you this, is that if you are interested in Spiritism, please read the very beginning, the book Codified by Allan Kardec, which he wrote a series of 1019 questions. And you find that fascinating of information given to us by spirits organized by the Spirit of Truth, as promised in the New Testament by Jesus. If you'd like to see more of a kind of a summary, an overview of Spiritism, I recommend you read my book, Spiritism 101, The Third Revelation. You can go to my site, nwspiritism.com, and you can download that for free. It's PDF, of course, if you'd like. It's also Kindle. It's 99 cents, paperback, and in Audible format. So, again, Allan Kardec, the Spirits book. You can get that free on PDF. Type in Allan Kardec, space, the Spirits book. That's how I found it. That's how I first read it. It's wonderful. Okay, let's start with the story. So, let me begin. So it so happened that I had time to observe him well before he reached me. So he's in this kind of, he thinks this convalescent area, is not quite sure. And he goes, I bet this person is coming for me. Because, and as he was coming, he was kind of talking to people, and he said, but he could tell he was making a beeline, but he was being, he wasn't hurried. He wasn't like when people tried to talk to him, he didn't say, no, I'm sorry, I'm busy. He talked to them for a while, and he just kept on his line to him. Let me carry on. And all his ideas of being a stranger to me, or I to him, had vanished from my mind. I had risen from my couch, but the half-droll, half-reproachful look sparkling in his eyes as he came to meet me made me forget my previous intention to apologize if I had committed any error in using the floral couch on which I had taken my sleep. For I felt conscious that I had only an indulgent friend, shall I say father, to deal with. As he came up, his hand was extended to take mine, which he clasped and shook in true fraternal greeting, gave his shoulders a very peculiar and significant shrug, inclined his head towards his left side, and looked humorously in my eyes as he asked, "May I offer my congratulations this time?" "This time," I repeated, taxing my memory as to where I could possibly have seen him. Now, said he, shaking his head and one finger in a humorously menacing manner. "You have been napping, and I caught you at it." "Yes, I have been sleeping," I replied, "but I am sorry if I've caused you any trouble or inconvenience by doing so." "Hush, hush, hush. Don't apologize. That which is natural is right and never needs to be repented of. As to trouble and inconvenience, you parted from them as you came through the mist, and if you wish to renew their acquaintance, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed, for they could not exist in this life. I hope, then, that by sleeping I've not interfered with your arrangements, for I presume you are the friend I expected to meet here." And he said, "Yes, I am Kushna, and as to your sleeping, why, that was more an item in the program than a disturbance of the same." So, item in the program. So, again, they know exactly what's going to happen to them. They have him planned out. I mean, this is the spirit world. They're competent to a degree that we can't imagine. Then Fred said, "I'm glad to hear that, but tell me, have I been sleeping for long? For I have not the least idea." "Neither have I," replied, with another of those significant shrugs of the shoulders, which I found to be indicative of a vein of humor passing through his mind. And he continued, "You see, it may be that we are at a disadvantage in that respect, or, on the other hand, it may be fortunate. We have no idea of time, since in the first place, we have no clocks here, and then if we had, they would not go." "Why not?" "Let me explain." So now he's telling them there's no time in the spirit world. This is why it's hard for you to understand. It's a different dimension. There's different colors. You sense things differently. That's why it's hard to bring back from your dreams when you're in the spirit world what's really happening. Then Kushna said, "Let me explain. This very pleasant spot is the home of rest, and all who are here come for that purpose. Now, you understand that there was nothing extraordinary in my finding you asleep. Well, in the long, long ago, how long I have idea, but probably in the early years of Earth's history, it is said that time paid a visit to this home and was so delighted with the faculties for rest and repose that it stopped, and no one has induced it to move since. That is why I cannot say how long you slept, and also the reason why clocks would not go if we had them. Is that not a good one?" So he's being facetious. "Excellent, but I'm surprised." "That is very probable," he rejoined. Before I could finish my sentence, "Surprise is a native of this life, and whenever you see her, you will find her face bright with pleasant smiles, and she is a very delightful companion to grow acquainted with. When she visits the earth, she frequently disguises herself with the veil of disappointment, and plays her visits in the shades of gloaming, so that but few people have any idea that she is one of God's favorite angels. But here you will soon learn to love her, and catch yourself listening for her silvery voice in every dell, and looking for the brightness of her coming from every hilltop. No one of the angels contributes so much to our enjoyment in this life as she does, and her visits are always welcome and courted." Then Fred said, "Under such circumstances, I can well understand that surprises are pleasant things, but I did not think it possible to sleep here." "And why not?" he asked. "Sleep is the bride of weariness, and so exemplary is their attachment to each other that slander has been disarmed before them, and no suspicion has ever marred their nuptial bond. Sleep sometimes is coy, but like the rest of womankind, she plays the part in order to excite her lover's wooing, and he who seeks to win her best regards can only gain his purpose in ministering to the requirement of her spouse. Therefore, where weariness is, sleep will come, and that where the one is to be found, there is no necessity for the other. When you have been toiling under the weight of a heavy burden, you may lay that down, but that fatigue it has occasioned cannot be so easily laid beside it, when a sickness has been struggled with and subdued. The consequent prostration still has to be overcome, but if illness proves to be the victor and secures the divorcement of the soul from the body, think you some miracles wrought to overcome the weariness of that struggle? Everything in nature, animal, vegetable, and mineral, has its seasons of repose. After all labor comes rest. Why should we expect to find an exception in the case of the worried soul? the conflict and battle over? Does it still not require recuperation and sleep to regain its healthful vigor? So he giveth his beloved sleep, and in that sleep the boundary is passed, at which weariness is compelled to say adieu. Now, so he's saying that for some people they're still necessary, especially when you're tired. There still is sleep necessary. And that happens in the lower levels of heaven. But eventually you do not need sleep at all. But that's when you've been more recuperated. Do all persons sleep on entering this life? Not necessarily. Sleep divides the two states of the soul's development as night divides 2 days. Some persons, when they reach this life, have not attained to such a standard as to dispense with it, and their condition remains much as it was before, until they're enabled to reach one of the many homes similar to this, where they pass the boundary line, and then, being beyond the reach of weariness, never require to sleep again. Others, again, pass the spiritual standard before leaving the earth, and so but make a temporary stay here while growing accustomed to their new surroundings. They then pass on to higher homes. So it all depends upon the person and their spiritual maturity. And this is why books like this are so fascinating, because he's giving this glimpse into heaven. Now, all kind of people, they die. There's a lot of differences, a lot of ways to enter heaven, but the central theme of entering heaven is you're helped, you're met, you're usually given a opportunity to rest and get your balance. It's like when you go in heaven and you've now gotten rid of your physical body, and now you are a paraspirit and a spirit, no more physical body. It's all your previous lives and all your knowledge doesn't just like hit you immediately. That would be too much of a shock. It's gradual, and you're not allowed to remember your previous lives until you're able to handle that. And even then, they may just allow you to look at your last two previous lives until you're able to handle the shock of what you've done in a previous life. Because I hate to say this, many of us have had horrible and done terrible deeds in previous lives. And someone who's a good person on earth and said, well, I've always been good. I've loved my family. I've helped other people. And then you look back 3 lives and, you were, on par with Ivan the Terrible. That would be quite a shock to your system. And we've seen that with examples in other spiritualist literature where this one person was a horrible person that sold slaves and tortured people. I've been told I've been horrible and killed people and cut people's feet off so they couldn't escape. I mean, I guess I'm able to handle that since I've been reading about spiritualism for a while, but that's quite a shock to be told of the horrible things I've done. So that's what I'm just telling you. So when you die, you don't begin to have this all-knowing saint and you understand God. So first of all, even the spirits around the earth say, even we don't understand God. You have to understand Jesus before you understand God. Okay, let me continue. I feel as if I could never become familiarized to such a life. It is so strange, or rather so different from what I expected. It has so many revelations, so much that I need to have explained that I can fancy eternity will scarcely be long enough for me to understand it at all. We shall never be able to understand it all, my brother, he answered with a depth of pathos that I had not heard in him before. I am only just beginning to comprehend, and others who have reached far higher glories than I have attained to say the same thing. The highest soul with which we are acquainted says he is but standing upon the shore, looking out and across the sea of infinity, over which he needs an eternity to sail. But he knows not what lies beyond for him to solve and explore before he can discern all the fullness of glory and development God has prepared for our future enjoyment. All we can do is seek to know that which is here around us. When we have comprehended that, the law of this existence will raise us to wider and higher fields of contemplation, so we shall mount the ladder whose top rests against the throne of God. Now, and this again is a recurring theme. Now, this spirit has not ever said the word Spiritism, but everything that I am reading here corresponds with Spiritist tenets. And what spirits have told us in from uh, spirits communicating with Spiritist mediums is there, and there's levels around of heaven around the earth. And the spirits who talked to the Reverend Chief Allen said 10, some people say 7, some people say 3. He says there's no set number, there's graduations. I said, don't worry about the number, but there's levels of heaven around the earth. And as you go up these levels, because you have more knowledge and your personality and your character is more loving and caring and fraternal, you ascend. And then it goes, now, do you want to know what's above that? It goes, we think there, we know there's levels above that. So once you go beyond the heavens surrounding earth, you're at this higher level of heaven. Now, does it cover the solar system, or does it cover the constellation or the galaxy? They're not sure. Because how many more levels? We have no idea. There's so much more up there. We have no idea, but we do think eventually you go higher and higher and higher, and you become part of this great ocean. Now, again, this is where I think a lot of people say that when you die, you become part of the whole. Now, but what they said is you become part of this great ocean, but you still have your unique character and personality. Maybe you're this well in the ocean, and it's like, if you think this dimension is this universe is fine with weird with no time, who knows how many more in different dimensions you go higher and higher and higher. And this is what Kushna is saying about someone who told him, goes, yeah, we don't even know. We're like at the shore looking at the ocean, and we just see the horizon. We don't even know what's on the other side of that ocean. And that corresponds to what spirits have told us, who have communicated to us, who have resided in the levels of heaven around the earth. Because there's levels of heavens above. And as you go higher and higher, you become more of a productive member of spirit society. That's what we're trying to achieve. Okay. Such is a delightful occupation, and all the more so because everything is conducive to knowledge. As far as I've been able to stand, so different to what I was taught or led to expect. But when I look inwards and see my limited powers, then outwards and find that every question I ask gives birth to 100 others in the reply it receives, I almost fear to think of the time that must elapse before I can begin to climb. What I have already seen is more of heaven than I've ever dreamed, more than I feel I shall ever have the power to grasp. How can I hope to move? And everything is just amazing to him. But the nice thing about this, and this is how heaven prepares us, right? He wasn't just like put into this matrix where he sees data, because he really is in that, but his senses and his routines that communicate with the outside world, interpret the data around him, to talk to Krishna and see that as a person, to look at where he is and look like it's green and mountains and trees and flowers. And so he's given familiarity. So he has a familiarity of being on solid ground and feeling like a solid person. But of course, everything is brighter and more wonderful, and there's no time. So it's like in elementary school, you're given one grade, the next grade. They don't give you something that's going to say, they don't go take you from kindergarten to college, because then you would just, the poor kid would sit down and cry. They take you first grade, second grade. So, okay, this is just a little bit different. And there's some new subject. Again, this is how the spirit world works. But it's awfully good to read about this and be prepared for it. Because to prepare yourself for the love and the fraternity and the fact that you are this being that's immortal, and you've got plenty of time. Like he says, well, how can I ever learn all this? Well, quite frankly, you have eternity. You are going to live forever. So there's time. And this is, again, what we have to look at. When you really start understanding Spiritism, read about Spiritism, and you to your foundation, when you know that you are an immortal spirit, You look at your life differently. You know that this one physical life you have, which is what, 80 years, let's say, could be shorter, could be longer, is nothing compared to infinity. This is just one small stepping stone. This is like you're in sixth grade and you go to school for one day. That's all it is. And so whatever happens to you is important, but it's not overpoweringly important because you always have time to catch up. You have times to rectify what you did wrong. You have times to learn more. You have more lives to make the right decision versus the wrong decision. All those things. Nothing's ever stopped for you. There is no such thing as a mistake you make which condemns you forever. And in fact, sometimes the mistakes you make is more important than the things you do right, because even though we see from children, we let them make mistakes because unless they make that mistake, and if they just say, oh yeah, don't touch that, don't touch that, it's hot, and of course they have to touch it, right? And then, oh, that's hot, but then they'll understand because they had to internalize it. Same thing with us. Okay. Let me carry on. I can fully, this was Kushner talking, I can fully appreciate the feeling which overpowers you, he said. What you are, I was once, and with a lively recollection of my own experience. It gives me much joy to help you at the commencement of your journey. As for the time which must be spent in these studies, take no care. I told you time had stopped, so whatever may be necessary for the accomplishment of God's design in you will not in any way diminish the remainder. In this, the arithmetic of eternity varies from that of time. When you have subtracted all the ages required to perfect your education, the infinite quantity remaining will always be the same. Whenever you see anything you don't understand, and ask. When you ask, stand still and do not hesitate to wait until you've mastered your inquiries. In this way, you will soon learn, and to assist in such an explanation will be a source of pleasure to every soul you meet. Now, this is something that when I read this first, I read it again because this is really vitally important in the spirit world. Let me read it again. Whenever you see anything you do not understand, ask, and when you ask, stand still. Do not hesitate to wait until you've mastered your inquiries. So why is this important? So what is he saying? He's saying, now in the earthly life, we'll keep going forward, and we may go forward with very little realization, but we make a decision because we know movement is important, right? Forward movement is important, and we need to make progress, even though we may not understand something we just passed by, or understand why something happened the way it did, but because we need to get to our goal. In the spirit world, and even in the physical world, we are on a quest for perfection. Now, when we meet people in the physical world who cannot move on until they perfect something, until they know it really well. And now this probably, hopefully not everyone, but for me, it's like, oh, I can't believe okay, yeah, okay. And then you have to ask questions, and you got to wait for that person if you're a member of the team, and they'll go through it in great detail, and you'll go to yourself, this isn't important. We got to do this, right? Yet that person is going to do well in the spirit world, because to be perfect, you have to master and really understand things you don't understand. You can't just like put that in your mind to another day. You can, but he's really giving good advice. He goes, wait until you've mastered your inquiries. Wait until you understand this theory, or this occurrence, or this event, or this rule or process, whatever it is. Understand it fully. Because then you're building upon perfection upon perfection upon perfection with a solid foundation. Okay, I'll carry on. That I have already discovered, for since my arrival I've done nothing but question every friend I have met. Well, continue to do so. You will then find that the knowledge is more easily acquired than you imagine at present. I will not forget your advice, but tell me, is it customary for newly arrived persons to travel as I have done? And this is his answer. The law of love, by which alone we are governed, is a very flexible one. True, so I was saying there's all sorts of things can happen, he answered, and adapts itself to every individual requirement. The system of administration being with a view to secure the greatest results in every direction. Therefore, the watchers at the mist scrutinize every soul on arrival, not to judge, that being no part of their duty, but to assist to the full extent of their power. They are skilled in reading character, learn the taste and disposition of all who pass them, and flash their communications to central stations for their peculiar aid required for each individual. In less time than it takes me to explain, the most suitable provision is made, and one or more attendants are dispatched to meet the friend in the arena or on the slopes, which is the appointed meeting place. So let's talk about that. And this is talked about in spiritualist literature. Where in this other environment, these spirits who have been kind of trying to climb up, right, from the lower zone, and they've cleansed themselves, and they want to be better. They have these watchers, and they'll look at these people as they're climbing up and they're trying to get to the low levels of heaven, and they will send them. They'll do a couple of things. First, they will read them just like what is said. They're skilled in reading character, and they'll say, "Okay, yeah, go meet this person." But they'll also send them more power, more endurance, and help them and help them increase and take away their fatigue. So this, and again, and it's all done customized to the individual. And this is another interesting point: is it's not like here on Earth where you have all these bureaucrats and you either fit in category A, B, or C, and there's no more categories, and you're going to be made to fit in one category, and tough for you if you don't. Not when you've got the sophistication and the overall intelligence, genius intelligence of the spirit world. They go, oh, okay, this person should be met by this one with this skill, or go to this place, or they'll do something for you. How do they recognize the particular stranger they are deputed to help in all the multitude passing to and fro? By the robes they wear. And he noticed that. But where so many are of the same color, do they not make frequent mistakes? Never. The messengers engaged in that work are too well initiated into their duties to make any error. The colors may appear alike to you, but to them they are distinguishing shades, each of which indicates a corresponding feature of the mind, and also having certain peculiarities to which individual ministers are assigned. There is no possibility of any mistake. Is this strictly infallible as a guide? Yes. That is produced by spiritual chemistry of the life they have lived, and nothing is able to change or falsify it. It is a testimony which cannot lie. Directly we see your dress, the blending of pink and blue. We know that you have a desire to learn the truth and an open mind to receive it, since blue denotes truth and pink charity. There are other indications that at present you would not be able to understand, which tell of your search after truth and disappointment in the past. Therefore, whoever sees you will be anxious to afford all available assistance in rectifying past failures. This is why you are invited to travel, that you may satisfy your thirst for truth by seeing it as it is. So, isn't that interesting? Just by the colors of his robe, which are so subtle that the spirit didn't even notice that, meant so many different things. It's as if all of us had this uniform with a UPC, a code on it, a barcode on it, that tells us our personality type, what we like, our habits, what we're after, our tendencies. And here he is saying, okay, this person's searching for the truth. Now imagine if you're the opposite of the spirit, and that you are closed-minded, you are mean-spirited, and those colors will say the same. Again, this is what spirits tell us, is that when one spirit sees another spirit, they can look into their mind, and they know you wear your personality and your character on your sleeve, and in essence, your brightness denotes your level of spirituality. And that's why when spirits go down onto the earth, they see all these dark shapes, and they go, "Oh, look at these dark shapes." He goes, "Who are these?" And one newly spirit went down there. He goes, "What are all these dark shapes?" And he says, "Well, see now." He goes, "Look, you're looking on from the other side of the veil. You're now a spirit. Those are humans. Those humans you're seeing have very little spirituality, and therefore they look dark." And then as he got used to it, he could see them kind of physically how they represented, but he also could see them spiritually what they represented, dark with clouds around them. When Andre Luis, in the book on in a series of books by Chico Xavier, he came down in Rio de Janeiro, and he saw like buses and stuff like that. He saw all these dark spirits with like clouds around them by people. Why? Because they were thirsting after money. They were anxious. They were nervous. They had left their more charitable emotions away. They were just searching for their own material pleasures. So again, this is on Earth, on the physical Earth, we can at least appear as nice people if we just keep our mouth shut. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work in the spirit world. Keeping your mouth shut doesn't work. That's why I tell people, you're not just on Earth to learn how to act civilized. You have to rewire your brain and stop malicious gossip. Don't gossip, right? I mean, you got to talk about people. Sometimes you have to evaluate people and things like that as you work and other things. But no malicious gossip. Don't think bad of people. And as Jesus said, look at the plank in your eye, not the sliver in their eye. Know that whatever anyone has done wrong to you, most probably, and I have to think about this every day, you have done worse in some past life. And that you are not on this pedestal of perfection and goodness and purity. You may think you are. No. At some past life, you've been way down there. So be humble. And don't be humble because you should be humble. Be humble because you really should be. Because the circumstances mean that you darn well should be humble because you've done everything wrong. Now, I'm sure there's exceptions. I know I'm not an exception. I'm sure I've spent my time in the lower zone and in purgatory for my rebelliousness and my attitude and my thieving and greedy character. I'm sure I have. So, because I've been told I've done bad things in the past. I've taken money. So therefore, be understanding. And just when you see someone do something wrong, it doesn't mean you have to put up with it. Doesn't mean they shouldn't go to prison, but feel sorry for them and say, you're going to go through some hard trials here. Yeah, your next life's, you better watch that. Okay, let me carry on. I appreciate your goodness, I replied, and hope that you will not find me too troublesome a student. We are not afraid of that. And now, if you are sufficiently rested, let me give you an insight into some of the services we are called upon to render to the different friends we have entrusted to our care in this home. With this, he rose from the couch where he had been sitting beside me during our conversation, and placing his arm within my own, led me away in the direction from which he came when I first saw him. Was I wrong in thinking these are the grounds of a convalescent home or a sanatorium? I asked as we walked along. Not very, he answered, and I'm about to ask your attention to the means we employ in administering to the restoration of some who are weak and helpless. So that is the end of chapter 5. And so next week we will continue in chapter 6. And this is just a wonderful book. In fact, I have the links to the PDF of this book in the description below. I also will have the links to my book, which I would recommend for people to read if you're interested about what is the physical realm, the spirit realm, who we are, what we are as spirits, what is our power as spirits. Because once you learn, once you really understand that who you are and what you are, you're the real you, the spirit you, not the physical human you, which is just a temporary diving suit, which is heavy and it shuts off all the stimuli. No, once you understand that, you'll understand why you're going through rather difficult trials and the chaos that happens to people all the time on Earth. Because everyone on Earth, we're on a planet of atonement. We are beginning to be a planet of regeneration. But everyone on Earth are going through trials and tribulations in order to perfect their character and to pay for their past wrongs. And they're perfecting their character by paying for their past wrongs, by learning that by going through trials that someone does something to them in maybe some different manners because of what they did to somebody before in a past life. So if someone like hits your car, a hit and run, well, you did something like that before. You're like, how could that, do that and not leave me as insurance? Well, you did the same thing or quite close. So you just have to go, okay, well, I've learned that. I'm not going to do that again. Now I know what it feels to be on the other side. You probably said, why did I need that? I already know he shouldn't do that. But remember, you probably asked for that because what the spirits have told us over and over and over again is we are the harshest judges of our mistakes in our lives. And it usually when you're planning your life, if you're in heaven, if you're not in heaven, you're in the lower zone or below, you'll have other spirits plan your life for you. You're not given that responsibility because you're not mature enough to handle it. But when you're in level of heaven, you create your own life plan, and you've got these advisors around you saying, and a lot of times, what I'll read about is that you're making these trials too harsh and too challenging. Slow down, because people want to just like, I want to get this over with. I got to get through this stuff and really imprint into my character and personality. Never be that type of person again. Well, that's why some people go through trials that are too harsh, and so try not to do that. You've got plenty of time. Because you're immortal. So take it one step at a time. Just like, I have people that say, I'm just not good enough. I'm trying to be a good spiritist. And I go, well, no, you're not going to be. You can't rewire your brain in one night. I'm still making mistakes, still saying stupid things, still sometimes losing my temper over dumb, trivial things. It takes years, decades. So just know this is the first step in a long, long journey that will take actually multiple lives. But we should start and we should try. And in fact, I have a book on the steps to take to start improving yourself. And this was a wonderful. It's based on a communication from the Spirit on Andre Louise. And it gives 24 steps of what you should do to start improving yourself in your life. And it's like a poem, and it's a very short stanzas. And I take each stanza and I say, this is what I believe Andre Louise meant. And here's advice from spirits of how to achieve that state. So I hope that might help some people. And I'll have a link to that below too. Anyway, I want to say thanks for being here and have a Merry Christmas. Love God, love Jesus, love your neighbors, love your family, and do as